Hey David. You're a great student of the game, and you certainly understand the nuances better than somebody like myself. And I've formed my own cockamamie theories on why centers today aren't as good as centers in the past. And what I'm wondering, I mean, my own personal theory on it is that this is a function of the introduction of zone defense, which has made post play harder. Can you tell me whether or not I'm correct? And could you tell me why our modern center is somebody like Dwight Howard, who has a very unrefined post game as opposed to the guys we had in the 90s?
Okay, so you're a young man. You're going back to the '90s. Bill Russell is supposed to be a great center. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I think he made 43% of his field goals in his career. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but uh, I think that there's always been a kind of a mythology that all big men have some kind of amazing low post offensive game. As a high school coach myself in the '80s, when you guys probably weren't born yet, uh, I had to teach our guys how to play in the post. We had to drill it. We did Jack Sikma drills. We did Kevin McHale drills. He was still a relatively young player when I was first breaking into coaching myself in '87, and they're hard to do. I think your theories on zone are intelligent and with a strong foundation, because the zone automatically kicks in that second help defender right there, depending on where you're posting. You still can post up a zone. It's just more difficult. You can't resort to kind of angles to the rim because another guy's waiting for you there. But there's no question that, to me, it's much more of the three-pointer and the perimeter-based game that we do so much about, we do so much work on, has impacted it, because big guys aren't always big. Some guys are big their whole lives, okay? Joakim Noah, Tyrus Thomas, they were point guards, and they were guards growing up, all right? That's why they're so good off the dribble. In Joakim's case, he was a guard almost his whole, young life, and only started growing late in high school. And so 10,000 hours rule, that from the tipping point where you become really elite expert at something with 10,000 hours of work. Well, these guys don't have 10,000 hours of work in the low post when they're spending half their time on the perimeter, either working on the three-point shot or being a guard and handling the ball. And so I think that, as much as anything, has had to do with that. It takes lots and lots and lots of time, years. Zach Randolph spent years and years refining his craft. Marc Gasol, Pau Gasol, the true artists of our low post game today, have spent all those hours. And let me remind you of this too. None of those guys are the athlete Dwight Howard is, okay, or that Shaq was. So those guys could get by on just overpowering you and dunking on your head, and that is the best play in basketball. I love those. But now that they can't always do that, finally, they certainly could do it in high school, and even Shaq did it 2 years at LSU, or he was just fouled all the time. Now in the NBA, they've got to get back to trying to get to those 10,000 hours with jump hooks and scoops and shot fake step throughs, whatever, because they have to do it for the very first time in their lives.
Do you think that somebody like Marc Gasol would have been a lot better in the 90s with the illegal defense rules, and he would have been a star on the level of, say, Patrick Ewing, or maybe even a little better?
I don't know. I don't know if he would have been a star. I'm a huge fan of his. He's definitely gravity bound, much more so than Patrick was till much later in his career. And I think that's something that we always have to factor in the game today, being so fast and so athletic, with so many explosive players at all positions. I mean, Gerald Wallace is a small forward, and he can play at 12 feet and does so frequently. There's lots of guys like Russell Westbrook makes plays at 12 feet. He's a point guard. Though, I remember seeing Yao Ming get blocked. I think it was by Nate Robinson. I could be wrong, but I think it was Nate Robinson, and other small guys too. These are new parts of the game in the last 15, 20 years that weren't really the case back when George Mikan played and Russell and those guys. The athleticism is so prevalent now that I think that that Mark at any level would have been about where he is now, other than the fact that obviously being such a good shooter would have helped him. But it helps to be able to make plays at 11, 12 feet, and he really can't.
I believe. Well, we were gonna pass to Zach, but I'll ask. I actually do have another question to ask you. I was wondering, since you have
Hog, what a hog!
such a I was waiting for the camera to pan to Zach. Well, okay. I'll ask one simple question, which is essentially, um, you have a firmer understanding of the game than a lot of us who write about it do. What are the mistakes you tend to see from bloggers and writers about basketball? Like what do you frequently see from them that just makes you shake your head in their analysis?
I could talk about this for an hour or two, but I won't. And this is not meant to be offensive at all, but your understanding of defense, not you personally, but in general, is a thimbleful in an ocean worth of knowledge that's out there. And just speaking as an example for myself, I played for an incredibly tough, rigorous Bobby Knight clone. In fact, he was friends with Bobby Knight. I did that for 3 years in high school, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year. We probably spent 70% of our time on defense, man-to-man. I coached for 5 years doing nothing but hardcore man-to-man defense. I traveled 10 weeks of summer every summer for a decade around the country, from Rick Pitino's camps to 5-star all-star camps and other types of all-star camps. Coached probably 100 different NBA players when they were in high school, learning the game as much from a defensive point of view as anything. And that didn't count the first book I read repeatedly, all the videos I watched, all the games that I studied. And I still am learning about defense all the time. So it's not even fair to expect you guys to know what coaches know. But you have a pen and a computer, and you guys write about defense. And I just don't think most of you understand it. Now, to your defense, a lot of coaches in the NBA don't understand it either. I'm always amazed at some of these guys that are hired have never coached a day in their lives. The fact that they play defense is great, but I certainly couldn't coach defense to the level that I could now based on playing for 3 years for a good defensive coach. A lot of these guys that are coaching in the NBA didn't play for a good defensive coach in their lives. And it's a very tough, nuanced understanding of the you have to really understand how to teach defense and how to inspire your players to do it. And I think that very often players are branded. Russell Westbrook is a guy that everyone thinks can be a great defensive player because he's so athletic, but he's really not. LeBron James came in his career not as a good defensive player, had no clue how to defend lots of what he saw. Mike Brown did a great job teaching him. I think Spoelstra is an excellent defensive coach as well. I think a lot of the less athletic guys are branded as bad defensive players, and you're wrong. People thought J.J. Redick couldn't play defense at all, and they're wrong. He's not great off the dribble, but he's very good chasing ball screens and position system defensively. System defender is something that J.J.'s good at. Stan Van Gundy's a big reason why, as was Coach Krzyzewski. So more than anything, I think that's probably where I end up shaking my head the most. But it happens all over the place, and it's okay. It's just about it. You guys are great. The bloggers tend to be more interested in learning the game than I think a lot of the national writers are, and that's unfortunate, but it's good for the bloggers, and it's good for fans going forward that you guys want to learn about the game.